hello. It is Friday the 2nd of August. It's episode 144. It is Chocy Chat. Will everybody join? I'll say some hellos. How's everybody doing? Is everybody good? It's a bit warm here for Chocy at the minute, but we'll do a Chocy Chat anyway. Alex Eats, how are you? David Lilly up there in Edinburgh, how are you? He's been at a food festival, hasn't he? I think I just saw a post. Mother Baker, how are you there in Northern Ireland? I think Belfast way, right? God, Catherine House of Chocolate, Lonely Larson, I can see. Mystic Chocolate, hello in California. Forest Rose Chocolates, gosh, there's loads. Some more bonbons, there's a couple of new names here I haven't seen before, but if you're new, hello, this is, you can ask questions, Chocy Chat, we'll chat about chocolate. A couple of things I'm going to talk about tonight. One of them is this thing. So a little bit later we'll have a chat. I'm going to hold that one up because I'll use that as a screensaver a little bit later, but we're going to have a chat about Eztemper. Probably going to have a chat about micro as well in terms of how to use it. I get a lot of questions about both, so I guess, yeah, tonight would be a good night to have a chat about those. So who else? AD Chocolates there, Dolce Mara, South Africa. Oh, let's send some waves out, shall we? How's everybody doing? There's lots of people still doing chocolate, lots and lots of people still doing chocolates. Are you going to come and say hello quickly?
The So Sassy Queen has came in.
The So Sassy Queen?
Yes, I am the So Sassy Queen.
You're the So Sassy Krakow.
I am.
Krakow. And Sam was coming to say hello.
But I'm the So Sassy Queen, I technically am.
Yeah, okay.
So in the name.
Nothing like giving yourself your own title, is that?
I want to be a
I'm the world champion. I'm the only one in the world. Happy days.
No, you're not. I am.
Your very own So Sassy.
The rest of the So Sassy crew. We've had a busy week. Been cooking, we baking. Sophie did desserts. Been a steady week. Anyway, should we send some waves out? So there's lots of people here. Lots and lots of people here.
It's really
Lonely there's in Denmark. Who else have we got? Chocolate Escapade, I think, is in
Bye, Chocy Chat.
Canada. Alan, hello. Mrs. So Sassy joined us. She is the So Sassy Queen, without a doubt. So, Grange Chocolates, how are you? Sophia's dessert looked lush. Yeah, she made meringue, topped it with cream, made chantilly, put vanilla in it. Pretty good effort actually. They didn't last very long though. So, hi from hot and humid South Georgia, USA. I can imagine. I just got a message from Ron, who's down at Quantico. And I think he said to me it's 36.5 today, which is a bit toasty, isn't it? That's way past. Even your beta crystals will melt, but at that temperature. Paula there, Fusion Chocolate. She's in a little village called Ilkley. It's a little town. It's a town called Ilkley in North Yorkshire. We've got Darren there up in Edinburgh. Hello. Send some hellos out, some waves out. There's lots of people. There's loads of people joining still. So I was about a minute late tonight. Very hot and humid here. Expecting thunder. Oddly, Isle Bakes from the Isle of Wight. You're just over the road from me, Isle Bakes. Hello from Napa, California. Hello. Really odd, really. So north of us, kind of over the hills, is Winchester. They had monumental rain. They had rain in biblical proportions the other night, like towns flooded. Bone dry here. Flooding over the hill, but here, bone dry. Absolutely nothing at all. So, very, very strange. Artistry, hello everybody from rainy Manchester. It's raining up there. It's blue skies here. I'm just showing off, aren't I? It's 95 degrees in Richmond, Virginia, but soon be moving to Sembach, Germany. Ooh, well, that'll be a different. Gosh, that's Virginia. Actually, do you know what? In terms of views of the trees, probably not too different. Actually, I would suggest that's kind of like for like. Mummy Services, hello. Coco Lily there down in Florida. Chocodilic, I think, is in Jersey or Guernsey, I always get it mixed up. So Belfast Bakehouse, hello. Cookies Ninja, beautiful day here. Chocolate Nana saying beautiful day here in Cape Cod. I think it's probably a beautiful day every day in Cape Cod, isn't it? It absolutely looks, I've seen it on a map, I've seen photos, it looks absolutely amazing. So what I was going to do is I was going to have a chat about this thing, just so we got it on record. It's Eztemper. I'm not promoting it, it's not paid promotion. I don't do paid promotions. All the stuff I've got, I bought, I paid for. I'm not in the habit of promoting stuff, apart from Thermapen. So I just Actually, there's conversations going on here that I can't even read out in a minute. So we'll have a little chat about that one. We'll talk about micro as well, just so we kind of got it on record for Chocy Chat. People can kind of go back to it when they look at YouTube and find all those bits and pieces. What is it, and what do you do with it, and why do you think you need it? And I've said many, many times, if I was starting my business again in chocolate from home, in terms of a home producer, possibly in a factory as well, actually, because I know some big producers that still rely on this, even though they've got temper machines, automatic temper machines, all those kind of bits and pieces. If I was starting again, I think the likes of Eztemper or the Kadzam, so even Magic Temper, I would get that sooner. I would have bought that sooner, and I would have started with that sooner, because it's such a game changer, and it makes tempering so simple and straightforward. And I would describe it almost as fire and forget. You measure the amount you want, you blend it in, and your chocolate's tempered. Then you can decide what temperature to use at. So we'll go through and have a look at those. So hello, if you just joined, greetings and salutations. Happy days, Woodrow Chocolate. I love Simon Woodrow. He makes some of the nicest chocolates. He really does. He's absolutely bold, bright colours. Linda there in Jordan. I'm just going to send a few more waves out there. So, Eztemper. What is Eztemper? So you've heard of the word silk, okay? Silk was a word that was coined by somebody, I can't remember who now. Basically, if we took tempered cocoa butter and we held it at a regular temperature, it's normally below. I think we are back. I don't know why did we get poor connection? I'm not going to have one of those nights where it's just shady. Just got a bit shady internet connection. I saw, one of the things I was going to say is, well done to everybody that got stars in the Great Taste Awards. There's a thing that happens here where you submit your product in, and it's reviewed by judges, and they award stars 1, 2, or 3. Whilst you do have to pay for them, I still think there aren't many good measures for us as chefs. Awards are one of those things that, at that moment in time, you got an award, and it was argued amongst a panel whether it was good, bad, ugly, 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. So I think to kind of have the guts and the determination to take your product, to submit it, to have it graded, to have it reviewed, and then awarded, I just think is a really good thing. It's certainly a good thing that helps with sales, it helps with promotion. Great to have on your website, great to have on your packaging if you can afford to get that little sticker on there. So well done everybody that did the Great Taste Awards, really good. Really good. Let me just go back a bit. A couple of things. Right, excuse me. I've got my rye. You know, it's Friday night. I've got my rye bean, haven't I? So, if we took cocoa butter in its raw form and it was tempered, if we then held that cocoa butter at a specific temperature, so it's normally below 33.5 and certainly above 32.2. That cocoa butter will go soft. Okay. Well, when we stir it and when it goes soft, those beta crystals will continue to grow. So what we end up with is not just a tempered piece of cocoa butter, but it's over tempered in that it goes really thick. I'll show you some examples of it. If we add 1% of that to chocolate at the right temperature, so the first thing I think we need to know is that if we've got a chocolate that's tempered, so it's got beta crystals in it, and the only reason it's tempered is it's got an abundance of beta crystals in there. If you warm it up, the warm-up is where that cocoa butter is damaged, or those beta crystals are damaged, not the cocoa butter. So the warm-up is where those beta crystals are damaged. Once we reach 33.8, so 33.8 is that scientific temperature. It's heavily measured. We've known about this for a long time. At 33.8, those beta crystals are gone. So whilst we still have chocolate and we still have cocoa butter, the crystal content of it has completely gone. If we then cool that chocolate down, and we cool it quite rapidly, those beta crystals will form again. On the flip side, we've got the opportunity to add beta crystals to it. In one form, you can add micro. Okay, so there's not much left in here. There's hardly any left in here. If we take silk and we melt it, which is what this is, I'll show you what this is now. It's got a little flip top lid. These come out of Canada, but this one came to me via America, which is just kind of odd. Got a couple of examples in. I've got 3 examples in here for you. This one for my cocoa butter is set at 32.4. And all it is, it's just very, very accurate in terms of a drum. If I open that one up, all we've got in there is just an empty container, okay? Fairly deep, has got an alarm on it. I'll leave that open, you'll be able to hear the alarm on it. Comes as a unit and it's preset in terms of the temperature that it's set to. We'll wait for that alarm. I think the nice thing with this is if you do leave the lid open, the alarm goes off and it tells you to shut it, because the worst scenario in the world is when you accidentally leave this off or you turn this off and you don't know about it. It's a bit shocking. Is it going to go? Is it going to go? We'll put it there for a minute. But it closes and it's got a little clasp, a little lock so that you can lock it down. It is going to go off. The alarm will go off. It just doesn't. Might be that the room's too warm for it. I've got a couple of examples here. We'll close it. In this one, we've got cocoa butter. This is just a Kilner jar. This one is already, it looks like it's big lumps, right? But if I just give that one a stir, that one will literally, that's already a paste, okay? So that's already gone down to a paste. That's the silk, so that's the cocoa butter at silk stage. What I do with that one is I'll put it in the Kilner jars, and then from the Kilner jars I'll put it into the next one. That one's kind of already done, so they're just little steel cups with a lid that goes on, loosely goes on top. Or you load your cocoa butter in, your tempered cocoa butter would be loaded into there. Okay, and then that's silk, and this one is very, very soft. So honestly I do it in a couple of stages. It takes kind of 48 hours. You can do it quicker, but the problem is you end up with these little kind of more solid pieces. When you put it into the chocolate, it then just doesn't blend in. So we want one that's like 4 or 5 days old if we can. So that one's already back to a nice paste. And then I'll take the one that was in there that looked like solid lumps, but it was softened, okay? That one I'll blend into that one just so that I've got one container that is very, very soft, really, really silky smooth, no lumps in it. If I leave the lid off this for a couple of minutes, that will solidify. And for anybody that already owns one of these, you will know what I'm talking about. You leave the lid off, it's an absolute disaster. If I paint some of that cocoa butter onto this granite table, that will completely solidify in the next kind of minute or so, depending on your room temperature. I've got another one here that we filled up earlier. That one is at its first stage, but that one is solid, absolutely solid. That one isn't going to blend. I put that one in there this morning. So I've got those 3 different types in there. If I leave, let me put that one away, let me put that one away. So this one here, that's the soft one. If I leave the lid off this, and I put this into some kind of cube moulds or something and gave myself like a little ingot, a little square, if I grated that, okay, we would end up with what looks like micro, okay? So we'd end up with something that kind of looks like contents when you use that. Same temperatures apply. With this one, the only thing I'd say with this one is this is much easier to blend in. So I will probably only melt chocolate to 33 degrees. And if it's a big amount, we'll take 4 or 5 chocolates. We'll take 3 or 4 kilos of chocolate, and then we'll blend in 1%. Yeah. Do not add this. I know somebody's written something there, 35, 36 degrees. No, don't, because once we're above 33.8, the beta crystals have melted and gone. So you're adding beta crystals in, and then you're directly melting them so that there's no crystals. You've still got cocoa butter, but they're not in that crystal format. Whereas this one is. I need to be careful I don't leave the lid off this. What we will do, so we were doing 4 kilos of chocolate. 4 kilos of chocolate, I would do 40 grams of silk. We'd wait for that chocolate to get to 33. As soon as that chocolate's at 33, roughly, we'll melt it to 35, 36, 37. Doesn't matter what temperature you melt it to. Melted is melted. Once that cools down and it gets down to 33, and it's 4 kilos, we'd add 40 grams of this. 40 grams, not a huge amount. I bet you that is 40 grams there. That's probably a bit more than 40 grams there. I bet you that's 40 grams there. Okay, we'd add that one in. I'll use a whisk, I'll use a stick blender at 33. We'll blend that in really, really well. Make sure the whole lot is absolutely fully incorporated. Here's a trick. If you're using a little stirrer, keep that in the machine. Keep that in the Eztemper, just because you'll get bits of it solidify, and then that's the bits that go to chocolate, and that's the bit that you can't blend out, right? So we'll get that to the chocolate to 33 with silk, and then we'll blend that in. Milk white, dark, ruby, caramelized, you name it, every single one will do exactly the same. We'll do the same thing if we've got a ganache as well. We would add 1% of the chocolate volume, okay? So 4 kilos of chocolate, 40 grams of silk, we would add that in at 33 degrees. We'll blend it through either with a stick blender or a small whisk. Once that reaches around about 32, it's ready to use, okay? I know somebody's asking me about 35, 36 degrees. I'll come back and I'll answer that one. So, wait, let me scroll back a minute. Let me scroll back. We had a little break in the, for some reason here we go. It said paused, but I think it's back on now. So I'll answer a couple of these questions in a minute, okay? So because we're adding the beta crystals to it, we can now decide what temperature we want to do it. I've said on so many occasions, right, that this graph that's on the side of the bags here is quite, I mean, it is quite literally the most pointless piece of information ever printed on a bag. It absolutely means nothing, because it says 45, 50 degrees. Is it 45 or is it 50? Because we know that small increments of temperature in chocolate can make a massive difference. So is it 40, is it 45? And then it says take it down to 27. So 27, I assume that that's seeding. The reason we take it down to 27 is we need to get low to that temperature when we're seeding so that all the chocolate melts. When you're seeding and you've got that mass of chocolate that's melted, when you add the seed in, absolutely nothing happens until you get below 33.8. The chocolate that's in there, when you get below 33.8, that's what's going to temper or seed or pre-crystallize your chocolate, okay? So 33.8 is the temperature that beta crystals will either melt, and below that temperature they will form, and they will form all the way down to 26.4, and then below that it starts to crystallize, right? So we take that 4 kilos, because we're adding the beta crystals into it, we can now decide what temperature we want to use it. So I talk to students when I have hands-on classes about this. I don't get too, everybody gets a little bit too specific about what temperature they will shell at. And the reality is that if your mould, the thicker the layer of that cocoa butter, the warmer your chocolate needs to be. If we're seeding, we have to warm the chocolate up, because we take it down to 27, then we have to warm it up. How aggressively you warm it up will dictate how much damage you do. So with silk and with micro, we're using it the other way round. We're using it in the opposite direction. We're starting at the lower temperature and then letting it cool down. So we're adding it at 34 degrees with micro, and then the grated product, not silk, we're adding it at 34. Okay, and 34 is just a little bit higher than 33.8. The mass of micro that you add in will cool that chocolate down enough so that there's enough in there. There's enough in there that it will continue to melt and distribute. The challenge you have with this one is you end up with the little specks dotted around everywhere. The only way to deal with that is to add a little bit of warmth to it with a hairdryer. If you do it with a heat gun, use a microwave, there's a danger that you're just going to melt more of those beta crystals, right? So that's, if we took that silk and we turned it into a solid block, which we can do with sous vide and that kind of thing, and then we grate it, how fine you grate it will dictate how quickly it will melt into that chocolate. But we're still going to use that chocolate on the cool down. We don't need to keep warming it up. If we catch that chocolate, if we've added the beta crystals to it, we've given it a really good stir, either with a bar mix, stick blender, with a whisk, with a spoon, whatever. Once we've mixed that in, we're going to go from 34 degrees down to 32, and at 32 I'd shell. So milk white, dark, ruby, I shell all of them at 32. Does not a problem. Even if that's a 3-drop or a 4-drop. I added the beta crystals in. I put them in there. I know they're in there. Absolute fact. Okay. With the silk, so we'll add it at 33 because it just blends in easier. And literally, like you put it in. I did that with a class this week. We put that measured 1% in, we blended it, and we waited 30 seconds and we shelled, and all of them retracted in the room with air conditioning at 16 degrees. So with micro, we need slightly warmer temperature, so we'd aim for 34. Ideal world, you do it at 33.8. The reason you wouldn't put that in above that temperature, if you're putting lots in, you're going to cool down that chocolate. If you start putting in at 35, 36 degrees, agitation will create beta crystals. Over aggressively mixing it will help that distribution. But if you put all that micro on the top of the chocolate at 35, 36 degrees, and you left it a couple of minutes, it's highly likely you'd end up with this pool of melted butter, and you'll have damaged all the beta crystals and then stirred them through. So it's really about being super specific with the temperature. At 33.8, beta crystals melt full attrition. They've gone. I didn't invent that. That's not something I've come up with. That's the science of it. We've known about this for a long time. Many years. 33.8 is the temperature on the warm-up when beta crystals have gone. This is why when you are doing these, if we take the cocoa butter and we melt it, because melted is melted, right? There is no level of meltedness. You can't be more melted than melted. Melted is melted, right? So if we warm that to like 35, 36 degrees, it's melted. Once we put that over water, cold water, and we stir it and agitate it, that temperature will go down. Once we hit with this one, once we get below 33.8, which will happen quite quickly, anything below that temperature, you will start forming beta crystals, right? The cocoa butter will form beta crystals. And if you think of it like a big mass of candy floss, cotton candy, if we could take an X-ray of tempered chocolate, we would see these microscopic filaments that would look like candy floss, okay? And if you think about how delicate candy floss is, like you can get a big ball of candy floss, put it in your mouth, it's gone. Do you know? If you're ever lucky enough, we used to blowtorch it on a dish at a table. If we had a big mass of candy floss and we just put a blowtorch on it, like within a split second, it's gone. That's kind of how delicate the beta crystals are. We cool that down. At mine, we can use at 26 and we can use it. The reason, and here's a question that I answer this quite a few times a week. Sometimes it's daily, because I get messages of the cocoa butter stuck in the mold, and I say, tell me what the temperatures are, and they're like, I heated it to 42, I cooled it to 27, and I warmed it to 32. Well, when you warm cocoa butter to 32, you're 1.8 degrees away from the beta crystals melting. From 27 up to 33, you'll have melted 50% of your beta crystals, yeah, and at 0.8, the rest of them will go. It also matters about how aggressively you heat it. Average human hand is between 28 and 32, so that's the perfect guide for tempering, right? If we cool that down to 26 and we could use it, we would have 100% of the beta crystals that we formed, okay? If we've got the chocolate at 33 and we add the silk to it from here, we can use it and we've got 100% beta crystals. If we warm chocolate to 34 degrees and we add 1% of the micro and we stir it and we use it on the cool down, we will have 100% of the beta crystals that we put in there. If at any point you take that chocolate and you warm it up, how aggressively you warm it up will dictate how many beta crystals are left in there. So if you chuck that in the ice, if you just chuck your tempered chocolate to warm it back up again, and the only reason we'd really want to warm it back up is to change the fluidity. And I often hear this thing about cocoa butter. We'll call it, so we'll melt it, we'll call it down to 26, which is what I recommend for my brand. We'll call it down to 26, and then, and this is the bit I always hear, I warm it up to 28, 29 to get rid of some of the crystals, some of the unwanted crystals. There's no unwanted crystals. There are 6 crystals, right? So 1, 2, 3, and 4, they're fats and sugars, generally that are in chocolate. There is the type 1 crystal, and that looks like that, right? So when it that won't come out the mold. That is absolute. I'm gonna have to melt that. That is wedged in. They will look all lumpy and bumpy. So that's type 1. That one is type 1 because it looks all a little bit lumpy and bumpy. Type 1, 2, 3, and 4 are fats and sugars. All of those melt below 27 degrees. So if we're in this situation where we're like, well, I'll cool the cocoa butter down and then I'll warm it back to get rid of some of the unwanted crystals. There are no unwanted crystals in there because they're all at a lower temperature. So we just need to cool the cocoa butter to 26. If we do need to warm it, it's just to change the fluidity. And the fluidity is really, you know, certainly if you look at a bowl of chocolate, you look at a bowl of warmed chocolate at 34, it's quite runny, isn't it? 33, it's quite runny. As soon as you get down to 28, 27, 26, really, really thick, cocoa butter changes its viscosity massively. 26, 27, 28, 29. So the warm-up's where the damage is done. What we don't want to do is damage them. If we've put all that effort into creating beta crystals, either in colours or in the bowl of chocolate, what we don't want to do is warm it up. The reason this works so well is for the silk, okay, got the right one here, for the silk, and this works for cocoa butter as well, and if I'm doing the big bottles, I'll explain that one in a minute. If I just melt my chocolate in a melting tank, in whatever, if I take 1% of this, roughly, so if you want to do 1%, if you want to do 1.5%, if you want to do 2%, there's no kind of right or wrong there. You use what you want to use. 2%, I'd only use 1% in dark chocolate. I might use 2% in milk white and caramelized, just because they're a little bit softer, a bit more malleable, right? Dark chocolate's very, very brittle when it actually crystallizes. We'd add that in at 33, give it a really good blend, make sure it's fully distributed, then it's ready to use. I think they nailed it when they called it magic temper, because it is fire and forget. You literally, you put the product in there and you mix it. They're not cheap by a long way. If I started my business again, I think that would be one of the best purchases I do, just because that's the first, you know, we all start off doing tabling or seeding, right? And tabling and seeding chocolate comes with its challenges, because we have to take the temperature really, really low of the chocolate. Then we have to warm it back up, and the warming up is where the damage is done. And I think a lot of chefs don't want to talk about the time. If you take your seeded chocolate down to 27, it's going to be a bit too thick to use. And it certainly wouldn't work if you painted molds. So we'd need to warm it up to kind of around 32 mark for dark chocolate. It's likely that you've melted off 50% of your beta crystals, and then it doesn't work, and then you get this frustration kind of set in. Same with tabling. The difficulty with tabling is, whilst tabling is very good where we stir everything round, we end up with 1 trillion air bubbles in there, and the last thing we want is air bubbles. What I would say is, for using micro and using a silk, I will always warm the chocolate to 35, 36, 37. What I know is that when I warm it to that temperature and then I give it a good stir and I leave it to come down to temperature on its own, most of the air bubbles come up and dissipate. So now I've got a chocolate that's free from air bubbles. We can wait for it to get to 33. We can stick blend the silk in. If I'm using micro, I can add that 1% in like a granular form, and then I can blend that through with a stick blender ideally. And then we just wait for it to get to 34 and we use it. So it truly is kind of fire and forget, right? I kind of like the idea. To me, is it just gone dark in it? It looks like it's about to rain. Honestly, looks like it's about to chuck down with it. It's just gone really, really dark outside. So let me go back and answer a couple of questions. I hope all that makes sense. Who's there? Jamie's there. I can see Jamie. Mind your temper. Brody. Yeah, chocolate nana. So here's the thing. Like these bags, it's so misleading, because it says, this is where a lot of chocolatiers get really, really confused. Like I've been through this and done the experiments with people here, where we sprayed a mould and we shelled at 29 and we had colour stuck to the mould because there wasn't enough warmth in that chocolate. And then the edges and the shells were just an absolute horrible mess, because the chocolate's, you know, at 29, the chocolate's nearly at that setting point. You can shell at 32. If you've added the crystals to it, you put them in there, fact. You saw them go in. You haven't damaged the chocolate by warming it up. So if you put them in there, they're in there, fact. Now you can decide what temperature to shell at. So if you want to do it at 31.5, which I will always shell at 31.5, 32, right? It does make a difference on the shine. Slightly get thinner shells, gives you a little bit more time. We're still going to go the process, or still going to go through the process of grab a mould. We're still going to go through that process of the dry phase, stand it, you know, let all the air come off, and then we drop it in temperature and the shells will retract. The challenge with shelling at chocolate that's 29 degrees, and there's a few people that I know that have had big problems with their cell knees over this, is they think they're doing something abhorrently wrong. If you were enrobing, say you were enrobing a piece and it's going through a belt, or you were dipping chocolate, you want that to be at the point where it's just about to crystallise, so it doesn't all run off and you end up with this big skirt on the bottom. Yeah, it looks like that, right? You know, a big skirt on the bottom of your truffles or on your moulded pieces, okay? With shelling, there's none of it to go anywhere. We're tapping everything out, okay? And then we're scraping it fine, letting it go through a dry phase, turning it up, letting that chocolate dry, and then dropping the temperature after kind of about 10 minutes, and you'll find that they will all retract. Shelling at 29 degrees, if we've got a load of colour behind there, that bag, that graph, and all the chocolate bags have got this on, because this one says 45-50, and then drop it to 27, doesn't say how long for though, and then it says warm up to 32, 31 or 32, which one is it, 31 or 32? And then there's a couple of dotted lines that go up to 34.5. Absolutely nothing happens at 34.5 with chocolate. We know what happens at 33.8. That's well documented. That's well documented. There is nothing I'm aware of. There's no crystal that I'm aware of that is at 34.5. And the sixth crystal, that comes from the fifth crystal, from, you know, 48, 72 hours out, going on for forever, right? Those crystals will form another structure over a long period of time. So it's really, really misleading. It says for moulding, yeah, it says 12 degrees and 8 degrees, and then enrobing 18 and 14. What? So it's really misleading. I think if this graph, I think if the chocolate manufacturers were a little bit more on our side and a little bit more in touch with what we did as chocolatiers. Luckily, they've only just found Ziploc. It's taken 30 years. And I'm not picking on Caliber, I'm picking on all of them, to be honest. If that bag was any of decent use, it would say, warm your chocolate to 34, wait for it to get to 32, warm your chocolate to 34. For silk, wait till it gets to 32 and add 1%, blend it in, and then shell and use at 32 degrees for shelling, or at 29 degrees for moulding, okay? And then if it was about micro or grated silk, melt it to 34, add 1%, blend it through until it's fully blended, and then shell bonbons with polycarbonate moulds at 32 degrees, or 31.5 degrees, between 31.5 and 32 degrees. It would be more helpful, wouldn't it? But it doesn't. It's just got some random numbers on it, and it means absolutely, I just think, I don't get a B in my bonnet often. Two things I hate. This label, which I find, I teach a lot of beginners, and they are totally confused by what's on the side of that bag, and I'm not able to explain what's on the side of that bag because none of the numbers that we know about in chocolate are in there. We know what temperature beta crystals form their most, which is 26.4. I know that from the cocoa butter, and we know at 33.8 the beta crystals are melted. Nowhere on that bag is that mentioned, right? Go back. The other thing I hate is smartwatches. No, I hate smartwatches. If you ever have a conversation with somebody and they keep looking at their watch, right, and you're having a chat and they keep looking at their watch, eventually you'll go, do you need to be somewhere? Yeah, people with if you've got a smartwatch, be careful you don't keep doing that every time you get a Facebook message, like, and the people around you are like, I'm not talking to that person ever again. True story, that. You can shell at 32, you can shell at 31. What I wouldn't do is drop below 31 degrees if I've got painted moulds. So the graph that's on that bag doesn't take into account painted moulds, because I've only really been doing this since 2007 in the industry, the coloured cocoa butter. It appeared in different pieces, but like mainstream, it was kind of 2014 that it really started to take off, so it's kind of fairly new. The graph that's on the bags is just not up to date with chocolatiers. It talks about sustainability and all their claims of soil and blah blah blah, but it doesn't really take into account what it is that we need to know as chocolatiers, and that is that if we're using silk or we're using micro, because they are the preferred forms now. The other thing is, the other option, if you're just beginning, and I get a lot of beginners, we're going to melt chocolate and it's going to be melted, and if you're seeding, it kind of needs to be above 40 degrees. When we add the chocolate to it, nothing, we stir, those little bits of chocolate melt into it, absolutely zero, nothing changes until we get below 33.8. And then from 33.8 downwards, while we're stirring, that's what's tempering your chocolate. And if we continue stirring, it will get thicker and thicker and thicker because it's over tempered, because what you've done is create silk, because it's over tempered. And this, if I can get the tub out, this is over tempered. This is over tempered, okay? So the next thing I was just going to tell you about is, and I've had this message a lot of times, this one comes to me. People bought so they're reptilian egg incubators, right? They're fairly accurate, okay? I think it's fair to say what you're paying for with this machine is the accuracy of temperature, okay? So like my melting tanks, they're not very accurate. I set it at 34, but it's not, because one end's 36 and the other end's 32, and somewhere in the middle we get an average temperature. I think with like Easy Temper, Magic Temper, Kazama, all of those, I think what you're paying for is the technology of accuracy. So mine's set at 32.3. If I go and probe all that cocoa butter, it will be at 32.3. It's just very, very accurate for me. The other one that I get asked a lot about is people buy the egg incubators, so the reptilian egg incubators, right? And they hold the cocoa butters in there, and then I get sent this video, and it's literally like they've taken the top off, squeezed it out, and it just looks like toothpaste. It's very clever. What you've done is you've held that in a state for so long that all the beta crystals are bound up, and you've created silk, which is very, very clever. No way on earth that you'd be able to spray with that. It's just too thick. It's not going to do it at all. What you can do is just give it a melt down. But I get sent that message regularly. It's like, what's happened to my cocoa butter? It's really, really thick. You've over tempered it. If you hold it for too long, if you hold cocoa butter that's tempered for too long, all those beta crystal chains, remember I was talking about this massive candy floss, it will all bind up and it will all thicken, which is incredibly clever. That it knows to do that, because that's what we've instructed it to do. So it's only doing what you've instructed it to do, right? What we would do is take cocoa butter and melt it so it's fluid, cool it down very, very quickly over water. Mine you can use at 28 degrees. Don't know about the other brands, don't do the research on that. Do you need to warm it up? The only reason you need to warm cocoa butter up, you're not melting any weird crystals, you're not melting the unwanted ones. The ones that are in there are the ones that you want. But as you warm up cocoa butter or chocolate, what you are doing is damaging the beta crystals, and they are the ones that you want. And I think you just need to be very, very careful. There is one exception, and it's this colour here. Where are you? That one really, really benefits. I've done numerous posts on that. So that one, we will melt that to melted, right? And then I put it over pots of water and we will cool it down to 26. That one I'll just warm up by 1 degree. I want the black a little bit more fluid. I want to use it at the coolest temperature that I can get away with. And I'd rather have the mold cooler, but because that's such a thick colour, okay, what I want to do is just warm it up by 1 degree. That from 26 to 27 makes a massive, massive difference. It just means that all those little black particles are better distributed and they're moving around. I'd rather have the mould a little bit cooler at kind of 16, 17 degrees, and then spray that so that it sets on contact, or it sticks on contact. All the others I will melt till they're melted. We'll cool them down over water. I'll show you. There's a YouTube video coming out on this that's going to bolt to our website. We'll have cold water, we'll sit that over the top, we'll stir it, we'll get it down to 26, we'll make sure it's evenly distributed. If I need to warm it slightly, it's with a hairdryer. I'm not putting it in the microwave, I'm not putting it, I'm not going to warm it aggressively, because when I warm it aggressively, we will melt the beta crystals, and that's the one thing that I was trying to do, right? I hope that. I would be adding to a machine with a wheel. Would I just stick blend it in with the machine, or heat chocolate separately and pour into the machine? I would get your chocolate up to, if you got a wheelie, I would get your chocolate up to temperature. I get your chocolate up to kind of 33. I would add the silk to it, or micro, and I'd just let it spin. I don't know if I'd put micro into a wheelie, but you can put silk in, and you just want to run the machine until you're happy that it's all been blended in. I wouldn't put the micro just in one dollop. I'd put it in different places and just let the wheel continually mix that. Maybe put a stick blender in there just to give it a little bit of a helping hand. I'd certainly put it in at 33 to give you chance and fluidity for that, for it to distribute, because those beta crystals have got to go far and wide. And most wheelies are between 8 and 12 kilos. You know, 12 kilos, you're putting 120 grams in, you're going to have to make sure that's well and truly distributed, right? So, what's my favourite compressor to use? If you go to the links on my page, on my highlights, I talk about I've got the Sparmax, it's a TC160 X, is it the 160? Yeah, it's the TC 160X, I think that one is. That's my favourite. I also have compressors. I tell you what I do have that I still enjoy using. Oh, it's gone here. If I'm doing a little bit of training and I'm just doing 1 or 2 moulds, I will still use that because I can travel with that one. And I can't spray for a long time, but this is still one of my favourites, and this is like the first ones I got, right? It's not. It's the TC620, not 160. It's the TC620X. That's my favourite. There's the 610 as well. It just doesn't have the dual hose connection points on it. But all the stuff that I use is on my highlights with links to where you can get that from. So chocolate spine nano, always have colour left in my moulds. If your shelling chocolate is too cool, it's unlikely you're going to melt that layer of cocoa butter. So I have a go at shelling at 32, and then go back through your steps of shelling, scraping, tapping out, scraping it dry, leave it upside down with a little bit of airflow until the chocolate's gone dull, leave these up on their side for 10 minutes room temperature, and then get them into the cold. If you can get them into a temperature that's kind of below 14 degrees, you'll find that they will retract really, really well. What's better when shelling? Setting it on the side or placing the mould upside down on paper? I would never put that, like imagine that's a sheet of paper. I would never put the mould flat down, okay? If I was doing Easter eggs, I would. If I was doing big Easter eggs, we would tap everything out and scrape them. We'd tap them all out and scrape them, and then I would leave that down so they get a lovely edge. But actually for bonbons, where I want a nice sharp edge because we're capping them, we will fill them, we'll tap everything out, we'll scrape it clean, we'll leave it up on its side, okay, so you get a little bit of airflow. After a few minutes, as soon as that chocolate's gone dull, I turn them up on their side, because warm air goes upwards, and if it's on its side like that, all the warm air is going upwards. If you leave it upside down, you can, if you've got no airflow going, you're going to get warm air stuck in there. If you leave it flat, flush on paper, you always seem to get bloom. If you've got absolutely perfect room temperature conditions, you might get away with it, but actually majority of the time you get all this warm air trapped in there, warm air gets trapped because it's upside down. So it needs some airflow, it kind of needs to breathe, if that makes sense. So James, what's the reason chocolate's not releasing from moulds easily? I've tapped them hard on the table until they're coming out. I've had no sticking colour, super shiny. There's a couple of reasons that shells get stuck in the mould. One could be vacuum, right? So if they look like they've all retracted, they should tap out. The only reason, and retracted, let's just change this word retraction to the word shrinking, okay? I said that we got chocolate. If we did an X-ray of chocolate, we would see this big mass of what looks like candy floss. Billions and billions of filaments coming off. That's that mass. They're all the beta crystals, long chains, okay? When they kind of dip below 14 degrees, what they do is they shrink. okay, because that's what your chocolate's doing. Chefs love putting posh words on things which don't make sense to most everyday people, right? If you've got retraction or contraction, just means it pulls away from that surface, okay? If you've got enough beta crystals in there, they will retract. If there aren't beta crystals in there, there's nothing making it shrink, okay? If you think about, I'm sure all of you have done this, have you ever poured chocolate onto a silicone mat and left it on the table? It all curls up at the edges, right? Or if you put it on paper and you leave it, if it was tempered, it will all curl up at the edges. That's it shrinking. That's all those filaments pulling together. I spilt Ribena down here. That's all those filaments kind of pulling together and shrinking, which is what retraction is. If they're not coming out, just say they're not coming out of the moulds, but they are shiny. If they're not coming out of the moulds, how are they shiny? Don't understand. Please save this live. I need to take these notes down. I always save the lives. They're all there. I leave my shells overnight in the fridge, capping them day after tomorrow, but not coming out of the moulds easily. Tapping hard makes them release. Could be the style of shelling. Could be how you're scraping. Could be how the edge forms. I mean, if they're in the fridge overnight, they should fully retract, right? The only reason that they will stick in the mould is there aren't enough beta crystals. I mean, you said to me there that you're adding silk or micro at 35 degrees. It might be, you just haven't got enough beta crystals in there. Try adding, I don't know if you're using chocolate creams. I don't know if you're using silk from an incubator or micro, maybe like grated one. If it's a grated one, try adding that at 34 and blending it in, and then try using it at that. Try shelling at 32. If you're using silk, add it at 33. If you add micro or silk or whatever it is that you're using to temper with, if you add that in at above 33.8, there's a real danger that you're going to melt the beta crystals, right? And if you add it at 35, 36, you're going to melt all the beta crystals. I mean, you've still got chocolate, you've still got cocoa butter, you just don't have that structure in there. So, couple of Alex Eats. A couple of weeks ago, I think you mentioned something about using yogurt powder to make cheesecake ganache. Can you go over that again? It'd be instead of, in addition to cream. Yeah, I don't like using cream cheese in bonbons. It's kind of probiotic, and I just think it's not particularly healthy. I always kind of cringe when I see, especially when people like claim, oh, it's got a 3-month shelf life. Like, I don't know about cream cheese. If yogurt powder, you can buy yogurt powder, and it's quite acidic, right? If you do just a normal white chocolate ganache, and I think for every 400 grams of white chocolate ganache, you can add 55 to 60 grams of the yogurt powder and just blend it in. The other thing I'd do is just add a little bit more citric acid. So if you make a white chocolate ganache and add a little bit of citric acid to it, it will taste like yogurt as well, right? It's a little bit of a fake squeeze there. So I'm sure a lot of you read the comment I made about the coconut ganache. I know, shady recipe if you ask me. Don't use canned coconut milk to make ganaches, and then just be really, really careful because there's an enzyme in there that breaks down emulsions. It's very, very good at breaking down emulsions, such to the point that it's used in its own way of breaking emulsions. When we've got natural products that need separating, we will use those two enzymes. And they're prevalent in the canned variety of canned coconut, or coconut milk. Hello, Philip. Right. Any other? I've answered that on the cheesecake. Saffron House. How many days for shipping to the US? I don't know. It depends where you are. I think 3 to 5 days. USA is normally quite quick shipping. USA is normally really good shipping. It depends how far out you are. Like if you're 200 miles down a track, it might be like a little bit longer. But certainly, you know, we've had people in Phoenix get theirs in 3 days. We've had people in New York. We just sent an order to Unalaska, and I forget the lady's name, and I should remember it. But like, if you could think the furthest point west in America, Unalaska is way better, and it took 7 days, and it's as far away from us as we can. It's probably nearer to. It's just. I had to Google it, and it's like, my God, that's about the furthest we've ever sent something from human beings, right? But That took 7 days, and that's USA. Good answer, Erin. I'm planning to make hot chocolate bonds. I like the shell to be quite thick. Do I have to do 2 layers, or can I leave the chocolate in longer before tapping out? Yeah, you can. 2 options there. Either grab a 2-drop chocolate, which there's a few on the market. A 2-drop chocolate's ideal for that if you want a thicker layer. And then you can use the chocolate at 32 degrees, and then you'll have a thicker chocolate rather than shelling twice, which is just much more work. And if you do shell twice to get a thicker layer, that's fine. What you need to do is wait until that chocolate gets dull but doesn't retract, because when you go do the second layer, if any of those are starting to retract and you tap them out, all of them are falling out. Seen it done many times, seen it done in a competition. We had tears, we had to get tissues, it was an absolute nightmare. So they wanted to do dark chocolate followed by white chocolate. And I did say to this person as a judge, like, I understand, I don't understand why you're doing this in a competition. You just put a trick in there that you didn't need to put in, and now it hasn't worked. And if you'd asked me before the competition, I'd have said, don't do it, or I told you so. So you can leave it in the mould longer, not a problem with that. I certainly do it with the eggs. If we've got a 3-drop, yeah, we'll put those in there and we'll just leave them. We'll leave them on the side. I don't raise them up. What I don't do is it start cooling too quickly. So we'll just leave them on kind of flat surface, and we'll give them another minute or 2, and then we'll tap them out. What I would say is, when you do it that way, tip it off the side first, okay, rather than just dumping it all the way upside down. Otherwise you get really, really messy, drippy bits in the middle of the bonds, right? If you reduce the chocolate or detemper and add another 1% each time, do you not worry about making the chocolate too thin? No, Horton, not at all. It's exponential. So if I started with 4 kilos, if I had 4 kilos of chocolate, I'd probably be looking, with that 4 kilos of chocolate, I need kind of 400 grams per mould. So I'll probably be looking at shelling 10 moulds, okay? The chocolate that lands on the mat's going to give me, once we've got all the shells, so once we've done 10 moulds, what's landed on the mat or we put back in the I'm going to need to add more chocolate to that to get another 10 moulds, okay? So if I need to retemper that, what's left in the mat, probably only going to get 3 or 4 moulds worth to do that more. So we would be adding more chocolate and melting more to it. It doesn't change the fluidity. You'd have to do the same chocolate 7 times, okay, or 7.5 times. You need to add the silk 7.5 times to change the fluidity, because between 7 and 8% will change the fluidity of your chocolate. So if I had 4 kilos, I'd have to retemper that same chocolate at 7 times. But the reality is that I'm using some of it, so I'm going to be needing to add new chocolate to it, which isn't going to change it. So no, it doesn't. It's not even noticeable. You don't even notice it. Even if you put 2% in, you won't even notice the fluidity change. 2% into the chocolate is only about 15% change of fluidity. You wouldn't notice it by eye. You wouldn't notice it by eye. Bonbon drops. Do you have a professional painting course? I do a hands-on class where we do a lot of we do hands-on class, and we do a lot of airbrush. Some people want to come here and just do airbrush. Some people want to come and do a little bit of everything. I think it's fair to say that the majority that come here is airbrush and understanding cocoa butter colours, airbrushing designs, and then shelling. Okay, recipes they can get and they can understand that, although we do give them a recipe pack. The majority that come for the hands-on class, it's all about airbrush for them. It's all about painting and decorating, whether we're using the great big turbine, or whether we're using the Sparmax, and even using the little tiny one, and using different brushes and different designs. And I think on the day what we don't do is a load of chocolates that I do. What we do is go through every single design that I can show you in this class on that day, which is why we end up with a load of what looks like really random chocolates. I don't want to show you what I make. I want to show you what you're capable of making, so that you can go off and run your business. The last thing I ever wanted to do as a teacher was say, right, here's my 4 favourite designs, I'm going to show you how they're done. Because everybody ends up with the same bloody design, don't they? So the hands-on class is where it's at. So Can we retemper chocolate by adding another 1%? Yeah, you can. What you do is take it to 35 degrees, let it cool down to 34, 34 and a half, 33 and a half, and you could add your 1% again. I very often do. What lands on the mat, we will just peel that all off, put it back in, and within 30 seconds we've melted it again. We'll just take it over 34 degree, we'll take it over 33.8 just to make sure everything's actually, all the beta crystals are melted and gone. We'll give it a good stick blend, get it back to nice fluidy type chocolate, get it at the right temperature at 33, we'll add the silk, blend it in again, and we're good to go. We're good to go. Probably add some more chocolate to it as well actually. So, do I have an alternative to canned coconut? Yeah, I used coconut cream. Cream is not like solid blocks. As I answered on the Facebook, on the Chocy Chat page today about the coconut milk, there's a recipe that was shared and it uses coconut block, which is the right thing to do. I've had so many people contact me over the years saying my coconut ganache has got green spots in it after 7 days, why is it? And it is the coconut milk. It's just too much water content. The other thing is the desiccated coconut as well. If you just use it straight from the packet, it's kind of got like 12-15% moisture to it. If you don't toast it, you won't drive off or break any of those enzymes that are in there, so you end up with these little green dots all over it, which could look quite cool, but they don't, I guarantee me, they don't taste very nice at all. I kind of avoid the canned coconut unless you can really bind it. I think the coconut block is much better. It's certainly got a better taste. Different cans of coconut, because you get creamed coconut and then coconut milk. Creamed coconut in the cans, you open it, you tip it out, there's all this liquid, then you've got to scoop out that solid stuff. That's the creamed coconut that you want. The milk is just literally water that's broken down in the can from that, because initially when that went in the can it was a solid block, and then over time those enzymes break it down, right? This is what I was trying to explain today. I'm not a big fan of coconut milk in recipes unless you really know that you are binding everything up and you're heating it past the point of breaking down any of those enzymes in there. So no, Evelyn, you can't make, you can't thicken a chocolate. You have to buy it at 2 drop. You can thin chocolates down, but you can't thicken them up. I guess you could add more cocoa mass to it and blend it through. That would be one way of doing it, but you totally destroy the flavour of the chocolate that you've bought. So, Flying Bananas joined us. How are you, Paul? Can you explain how you use Eztemper with Deco cocoa butters? Yeah, I said earlier we will melt the butter. So like with that one, I don't do it in these. I don't do it in a small amount. So if I'm doing less than kind of 50 grams, 60 grams, we'll melt it in a pot and we'll balance it over water and we will create the beta crystals that way. If I'm spraying with the big gun and the big or bigger amounts, so say I was doing, I'll grab one of these. Here we go. Say I was spraying that size bottle. What I do is I get that melted to 34. So I just get that fully liquid and melted to 34. I would tip a little bit out. We'll tip a little bit of it out into a tub, and then for that we need 2.8 grams. Right, for that whole bottle, because that's 280, so 2.8 grams. We get 2.8 grams, sit those on we put the 2 grams in there, put the lid back on, give it a really good shake at 34, okay? Really good shake, make sure it's really well blended, and that's going to start dropping in temperature. And then the extra that we put in there, we'll put back in and just give it a shake. What you'll find is with these bottles, when they're new, there isn't much room to get the silk in there, okay, because they're fairly full. When I fill them, they are expanded, and when they cool down, they drop down in level. You can see where I filled that almost to the brim, and then because we temper it with silk, it shrinks, which is what I'd expect it to do, which is why when you buy these, they rattle. Because what's in the middle of there is a coloured cocoa butter that's retracted away from the outside edge, okay? But we take kind of, 20% out, and reserve that, put the silk in, give it a really good, and then I'd wait for that to, I could start using that at 32. The difference is if I'm using the big spray gun and the turbine system, I can spray, I can use it at a slightly warmer temperature. If I'm using the smaller spray gun, we'll wait for that to get down to 20, 28, 29, and we'll probably spray at that. And it's really to do with the volumes. If I'm tempering in the small tubs, we'll drop that to 26 and we'll spray. I want to use the cocoa butter at the coolest temperature that I can get away with, unless if I'm in a room and it's really, really well AC'd, I might use the cocoa butter at 27, 28. The warmer your room, the cooler the cocoa butter. The cooler your room, the warmer the cocoa butter, with the exception of the turbine, because it atomizes so quickly. These are the big, I've got it here. I've got it here. That's the Fuji spray, right? So with that on the big turbine, we'll use that. We'll temper that cocoa butter in the bottle, and then we will spray, and we'll use it at 32 because I'm using it on the cool down, all right? Because I added silk to it, whereas with the other one, it's a little bit like seeding. We're balancing that over the water. What I don't want to do is warm that one up. But either way, we're always using it on the cool down, all right? So the temperature of your mould is really important though, because if your mould is too warm, the cocoa butter won't stick because it's a fat, and fat doesn't stick to plastic, does it? Unless it's really, really cool. So all it'll do is slide off, and it'll just be a horror story. Yeah, coconut block. It's quite solid. Comes in little packets. So so I've used my machine, reheated the chocolate next day, unsure exact weight of chocolate. Well, you don't need to know. Yeah, well, you do. You roughly need to know the weight of it. You should be able to work out how much you've used by how many moulds you've done. We need a lot of chocolate. We don't use a lot of chocolate. It takes 440 grams to fill that one. When I tip it out and it's all gone, shell weight is probably less than 60 grams. So you'd be able to track back on your on how many moulds you've done. That should give you an idea of how much you've got in there. But yeah, I kind of need to know. You need to know your machine weights, and if you're going to put more back in, how much silk, you can eyeball it. You know, there's no right or wrong way. I mean, if you put too much in there, it's going to be setting in front of your eyes. In which case, you can just give it a blast with a heat gun, right? Mo giving out the advice there. Hashim, how are you? Right, it's 9:30. I'm going to go and have dinner. Oh, I'm going to go and clean up now. I will save this one. I'll post this. I've got a few that I need to load up to YouTube, because I'll be a bit slow doing that this week. We've got a lot of projects that we're juggling at the minute. Me and Mrs. So Sassy, we're tired. We're really, really tired. There's a new website launching soon. There's new products. There's just so much stuff that's going on at the minute for us. Just kind of ready for a little bit of a relaunch, if I'm honest, including all the classes. There's new classes. There's a new advanced class that's available. There's some new products that are going onto the website. There's some products that people haven't seen before, and there's also options to book classes that, like our professional level. But we'll see once we get the website, once we've finalised everything, I will get all that all together, and I will talk to you all about how that works. Hope you found that useful tonight. I think Eztemper is a bit of a game changer, right? If I was gonna start my business again, I think I would have invested into it earlier, much earlier. I just think it's an expensive piece of equipment, but I'd have done with cheap plastic bowls, and I'd have done without lots of things, and bought that first if I was going to do that again. And I think that, you know, there's no positive for me in promoting it other than knowing that you guys can get the benefit of that advice. Right? I don't make money off selling these things. I make money doing this. But I'm going to go. Have a lovely week. Try and stay cool. The world is not worlding right now, so be nice to people. I'm covered in Ribena for some reason. Don't know why. Oh, there you go.
Bye, Chocy Chat.
See you next week, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.